Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a little sewing project. So this combines both machine and hand sewing to make some fabric strawberries. This is from Holtz fabric using a fig tree quilts pattern. And what I love about this is I feel like this really goes hand in hand with our cross stitching and other kind of decor. If you want to make your own strawberries, it is so easy, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how I made these strawberries. Now, I did do my sewing off camera, but I am going to walk you through everything and show you the pattern, the templates I made, and then we'll talk about how I sewed all of this stuff, and then we will assemble the strawberries here on camera today. We're using the strawberry shortcake pattern from Fig Tree Quilts. I've also used the pattern and made some templates from freezer paper. There is a large and a small berry in this pattern. You can see that I sewed the two sides of the fabric together. I clipped around the edges to make it turn nice. I turned all of my pieces right side out, and then I pressed them really well. For the tops of the berries, you cut a slit in the back of the fabric and turn it out, and then I'm just going to hide that, as you can see there. We're also going to use a little velvet trim. I have a Spellbinders one here, or a Holtz velvet trim, and from my Cheeky Apple felt stitching die for Spellbinders, I have this little floral, and I feel like it's the perfect little strawberry bloom to add to our design. I've got some wool roving and upholstery thread, and we are going to get started putting together our strawberry. So my preference for stuffing most items is this wool roving. You can use polyester fiber fill, cotton batting. You can use crushed walnut shells if you want to. Really, whatever you like to use to stuff is going to be perfect. I am going to load up a sharp tip needle with some upholstery thread. If you have watched any of my finishing tutorials or anything like that, you know that I use this upholstery thread for all of that kind of lacing and gathering and all of those things, because I find it to be really strong and I don't have to worry about my thread breaking. And that's going to be important here because we're going to be gathering and pulling things very tight. What I'm doing is I am stuffing my berry most of the way full with the wool roving, and then I'm going to take my upholstery thread and a sharp tip needle, and I am going to do a running stitch around the top of the berry. With this, I'm just trying to do as even as possible. I'm kind of just, you can see, going in, out, then I'm pulling, and we're going to get back to where we started. I generally like to take like one little running stitch past where I started, and then I like to fold in those raw edges before I pull this tight. Now, you don't have to pull it all the way tight right now. I haven't secured it yet. If you want to stuff it with a little bit more wool roving, you can. So I'm going to show you it this way, and then I am going to show you how I did the rest of them. I'm going to kind of quote unquote mass produce them. And I actually did end up pulling it tight and securing and doing all the rest of them at one time before moving on. It's really kind of whatever you prefer here. Like, I kind of looked at this and thought maybe I need a little bit more, but honestly, fill it to the firmness that you like. They are perfect for adding to your berry bowls. You can see I have some here, displays, your dough bowls, your tiered trays, all kinds of wonderful things like that. Then at the top of the berry, you can tie it into a little knot and secure, or if you want to go back and forth a couple of times, for this one I actually went back and forth across the top just because I felt like that made it a little bit more secure. And then you want to knot it. So when I get to where I think it's fine, I'm going to run through, and then I'm going to go with my little loop, and I'm going to pull my thread through that loop twice, pull it into a tight little knot, and then I like to kind of push that out down through the middle of the berry and out the side to help bury my knot and bury the end. I will say I actually left it in my berry for this one, only to discover that I really did not like how I did the top of my berry. So I actually pulled it out, and I was able to do that and not ruin the gathering at the top of my berry because I had double knotted it. So I actually cut that off, and then I did a running stitch around the berry cap. I will show you this a couple of more times just to really give you a much better idea of how this looks. But I did a little running stitch, kind of a circular stitch in the berry topper here. And then what I like to do is I like to place my berry topper on the top of my berry. Now, just like we did with the strawberry, my suggestion is to now knot this. You do not want this coming out and having to redo this step at this point. So I would suggest knotting. So now I have the layering piece for the top of the berry, and I am doing a little gathering stitch around that as well. Just full disclosure, I actually think it's a little easier to do each of these separately, but I did it together for this first one. So let's just kind of go with that. And then I will show you how I did it here in a minute. It's really up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with for this particular step. Now on the photo, on the chart, on the pattern, you will notice that the leaves are all loose. You will notice on mine that I have tacked the first layer, the larger layer, down to my berry, and I am going to show you that. So I'm going to lay my topper onto my berry, and using 5 straight pins, I am going to just push those in to hold this in place. This will give me an idea if I like how my berry topper looks before I start stitching this down. So we're just going to place those in, and then you want to remember to remove those. Yes, I know in the photos you can actually see that I accidentally left one of these in. I found it after I shot my photos. Okay, so now we want to catch the topper with our needle. So I'm just going to go back down here through the center, and I am going to kind of go through my berry, and I'm going to try to get my needle through the tip of my leaf. And we're doing little tiny tacking stitches. So I'm going to just come up, go back down, and then I'm going to go through the center of my berry to the next leaf. I'm going to tack that one down. So come up in it, also go down, come up in my next one, go down right next to that, and I'm going to continue for all 5 of these berry caps. To me, I liked how this looked a little bit better. So this is something different than the chart says. Please feel free to do this however you like to do. I just really was trying to make these work for me and to my eye and what I enjoy. And I always want to encourage you guys to do the same. Now, once you have that kind of tacked in place, make a little knot here and in the top of your berry, and then push it through the berry, through the center of the berry, and come out the berry body of the berry if you can. And then we're going to snip that, just burying the end of the thread in the center of the berry. I'm so sorry I'm out of frame. I will do this here again in a minute and show this to you a little bit better. Okay. Now they're not going to be perfect. Now you can kind of squish and move it around and make it work. So then I'm going to take a little length of this velvet ribbon. You can use whatever you like, but to me, I liked this little additional green, like little vine, little stem kind of touch to the top of my berry. I knotted it. I'm going to put a tiny little bit of hot glue on the back. You can also use Aleene's glue if you like that better, or you could even sew it in place if you wanted to, and I'm just going to glue that to the top of the berry. Then from my Cheeky Apple felt stitching collection for Spellbinders, I have taken the flower from this. I know it's from the apple set, but I thought this looked like a little flowering, the little strawberry blossom. And I have die cut the flower. I've die cut the flower center. I have rolled that flower center just like I have shown in some of my other videos. I am hot gluing the loopy center to the white blossom base, and I'm putting a little more glue around here so I can give my flower a little more texture. I'm going to put a dab of hot glue on the back, and then I'm going to glue that right to the top of my little strawberry as well. Now, here are a couple. I have one pink, one red. I love the vintagey vibe of the Tim Holtz fabric, and I feel like it works really nicely for these particular berries. And I think that they would look absolutely incredible with all of our strawberry stitching. Maybe you are stitching fruit this summer. I know there's lots of different stitch alongs and things going on, and strawberries are always a very popular decorative type of item for the summer season, as well as for cross stitching. And these would make a wonderful addition to any kind of decor. Maybe you want to tuck a trio of these around your cross stitch finishes, or tuck them into your tiered trays or dough bowls with some of your other pillows and things. Imagine how cute that would be. Okay, so here you can see I am mass producing. Now, this one red berry I'm working on right here is the large size. I actually did like 5, I think, small and 1 big, just for the sake of this video. They are very, very fun to make. I could see myself making lots more of these, and they don't take a ton of fabric either. They would make wonderful retreat gifts. I think that it would be awesome to make a bunch of these up and pass them out at retreats. So just a few little ideas for you there. I am stuffing mine with wool roving, as I mentioned earlier. And I know you guys, if you've watched me finish before, you know that I use wool roving a lot in lieu of polyester fiber fill. So I am linking the wool roving that I enjoy down in the description below for easy reference. Definitely check that out if you're interested. Make sure and either lint roll or wipe away any of that residue that might get onto your outside of your fabric of your berries. And that's going to happen with polyester fiber fill or whatever you use. Okay, we're going to gather the top of our berries. I know that I showed this a minute ago, but I really wanted to show this in more of a mass production type of assembly. So we're just going around the top. But remember, I said that I ended up pulling these tight. I actually just kind of left them as stuffed as full as they are and rolled with it. I do try to fold in that raw edge. I do think it kind of helps keep your berry look a little bit nicer. So right before I pull tight, I'm going to try to go around the edge. I'm pushing down with my thumb the wool roving, and then I'm pulling tight and just tucking that raw edge into the inside of my berry, and then I'm pulling it. See that cute little gather there? And then we're simply going to go through the top. If you need to go back and forth a couple times, you can. You can also do like here, I made a little loop. I'm going to go through it twice, pull tight, push that down through the center of my berry, and come out the side to bury the end. And I'm going to knot the end of my thread and move on to the next one. So again, I was mass producing these one right after another. Don't be limited by your fabric choices either. So when I looked at my strawberries, maybe if you're like me, you thought I need to use red fabric. And that was kind of where I started. I used some of Tim Holtz's red fabric. There's my AirPod falling out of my ear into my berry bowl. And I love the reds I picked, but I wanted more variety. And I grabbed his pink bundle here, and some of the patterns, I thought, you know, they look like a little bit less ripe berries. And I loved the design, the texture, and the interest that some of these pinks added to my berry bowl. They ended up being some of my favorites, to be honest. And I love how they look together, the reds and the pinks together. So that was kind of how I picked the fabrics for these. Go through your stash. Obviously, I used all Tim Holtz fabric here, but you can use whatever you have on hand, whatever you like. I just really loved the different textures and the kind of vintagey, grungy feel that these have. The berry toppers, I was really specific with these as far as the greens that I wanted to use. I used a green text, and then I used a green floral. I wanted them to be a certain color of green, but I really did want to stick within that same Tim Holtz line of fabric so that they all have a very similar look and vibe. But I needed the greens to be a specific green, and these two were my favorite from that, and I will link to those down in the description below as well. Another idea I had for these that I did not do, but I think would be cute, especially if you were giving as gifts. Tim Holtz has those little memo pins that you can stick into things. They have a little circle at top, and then it's a pin, so it could stick down into your pincushion berry or whatever. I think it would be cute to either stamp a little note to a friend or put their name on it and stick it into the berry, place it on like their place setting at a table, or if they're a retreat gift, place the recipient's name in it and hand them out to each person. It's something that can be removed really easily. But I think that that would be a very cute way to adorn these as well. And again, it's another Tim Holtz product. It doesn't have to be a Tim Holtz product, absolutely, but I think that's kind of fun. You could also take any of your favorite decorative pins that you may have in your stash and use those to adorn your berries. If you have pins from Just Another Button Company or Jersey Girl Stitch Co. or So Pretty pins or decorative sewing pins, whatever your favorite decorative pins are, or if you make your own, how cute would it be to put some of those into your berry pin cushions? Fill these with some crushed walnut shells or whatever, and you can actually use them more as a pin cushion, more like a tomato pin cushion almost. I think that would be absolutely precious. So just giving you several ideas on different either ways to adorn or to stuff these berries. Okay, let's walk through the gathering for the berry topper. For the berry topper, kind of around the center of this, I like to go around and I am doing a running stitch. So this is just a simple running stitch on the back side of this. This has the slit in it. The instructions do state to make a little patch to cover this. Honestly, with this fabric and kind of the grungy vibe I was going for, I don't care if I cover that or not. And I decided that step was something I could skip because even if it frays, I don't care. Plus I am tacking my leaves down, which automatically hides that kind of opening anyway. So I just really didn't feel like I needed to do that step. Now, once I get that gathered, I pull it tight. I'm going to then place my berry topper right on my berry. And just like I talked about with that first one, we are going to grab a little bit of the top of the berry and come through the center of our berry topper and then start tacking down the leaves. And again, I do want to put pins in the tip of the leaves. You don't have to. If you feel comfortable just holding it in place, you can. I found that my fabric didn't shift as much if I just pinned these. And plus, I could get a really good visual of, oh, do I like this? Do I need to shift this or move anything around? More often than not, it was fine and good to go. Then we're going to go down or go through the center of the berry down to the tip of each leaf. Do a little tacking stitch to tack all of this down. And that is how we are going to attach the leaves, that first layer of leaves. And we're going to do this for each of our berries. So another little tacking stitch. And when you're finished, I did it a couple different ways, but I'll be honest, I came back up through the center and then I'm just going to do another little knot where I do a little loop and pull through it twice. And then I push it down through the center and out the side of the berry to bury that end. I found that I kind of liked keeping each step separate. Let me grab another length of this upholstery thread here. and we're going to gather the rest of our berry toppers. Couple of notes. I know I mentioned there's that large size, that's the berry I just did, and a small. There is also 2 different sizes, a large and a small, for the first layer berry topper, the 5-petal layer. For the 3-petal layer, it is the same size for both, and that template comes right in the pattern. You can purchase either the paper or the PDF pattern right from Fig Tree Quilts, and I have links to that down in the description for you. It's a really, really great pattern. I've actually had it for years, and I think I maybe tried to make one of these one time, probably back when I wasn't doing as much hand stitching, and I was a little bit frustrated, but I feel like just like any skill, the more you do hand stitching, the more you try these things, and maybe the more you let go of perfection, the happier you will be. And Tim Holtz's fabric obviously is very grungy. If you're a paper crafter and a Tim Holtz fan, you guys know his whole vibe is very grungy and kind of messy. And I shouldn't say messy. Grungy is the better term for it. Distress. And I found that I really kind of let go of the quote unquote perfection aspect of this and ended up with a bowl full of berries that, just like in nature, are not perfect, but are beautiful. I absolutely was thrilled with my berries. I think they there's too many to fill the little small berry bowls I have here, and the big one I maybe don't have quite enough. I might go ahead and make a couple of more berries, maybe 2 more big ones, so that I have odd numbers in the small and the large, we'll see, and then throw them in that bowl, and they're the perfect accent. They go great with any of your summer decor, especially if you have anything else in these colors out. I think it's really, really cute. Okay, so we're going to come up through the top. This is why you want to use a sharp tip needle, by the way. Pushing through those layers, pushing through the wool roving, it makes it so much easier if you have a nice sharp tip needle to work with. I'm going to come out or down through the middle of the berry, out the side. I've really got my method now, and I'm feeling good about it. So while I tacked down this layer, the little 3-leaf layer, I am not going to tack the individual petals down. I am going to leave those free. And I want to talk a little bit about the sewing of these. So where on the 5-petal berry topper layer, those 2 layers were sewn together front to front. A little slit was cut in the back of one of the layers, and it was turned right side out. The little layer was sewn together wrong sides together. Instead of right sides together, wrong sides together, and I sewed right on my little drawn line, and then I cut around it with the Tim Holtz haberdashery scissors. So I cut really close to my stitching, maybe about 1/8 of an inch away. And then I frayed the edges with my finger. I will show you that here in a little bit. Luckily, I did not sew enough of these. I was 1 short, so I had to go to my sewing machine and sew 1 more of these really quickly. And I can kind of show you that. But I like that little frayed edge. I actually have been fraying quite a few things lately for that rusticy kind of look, and I'm loving it. So, that is a fun little tip too. And if you wanted to, the 5-petal layer could also be sewn back to back in the same way. So if you wanted it to be a little bit more frayed and a little bit more prim or rustic, I think that would be a fantastic option for that one. So here I'm just sewing around. You can see tacking down my little leaves, coming up through the center. We're going to make a little knot. I make a little loop, go through it twice with my needle, pull tight, push down through the center, out the side of the berry. 1 more of these, and then we are going to do the berry topper. Okay, so now I have my little 3-layer, and I am simply going to, I didn't like what I did. We're going to do the same thing. Right in the center, I'm kind of just doing a circular running stitch so that we can gather and pull up the leaves. The reason we don't just tack this right onto the top of the berry as is, nor do we do that with the initial layer, is because if you just place it on there, the leaves don't have movement. They just lay flat. By doing a little gathering stitch and pulling that tight after you've gathered it and knotting it, look at how the leaves are gathered and they have that movement. So then I'm just simply placing it on the top of the berry and we're going to tack it in place. This was kind of random how I did this on each one. I would place it on the top of the berry, and depending on what else was going on, some of them I had to stitch more than others until I kind of liked how this layer laid. My whole goal is I don't want to see a ton of my upholstery thread. However, I tried to keep it mostly in the center. We are going to tack that little velvet piece on top and a little flower. I didn't do the flower on all of them. I like the variety of some have a little bloom, some don't. But that way it just adds interest. So see how they're all kind of a little bit different? I love that. It's very organic, very fun. Okay, here is the other one I sewed. Remember I said I had missed one. So my 2 layers, I've just laid them together, sewn around them with a really short seam, stitch length, pardon me, not seam, stitch length. And then I simply trimmed that, and then I'm taking my fingernail and just roughing up the edge. So anything from the stitching to the edge now is nice and roughed up. I love this. I love this look. And then we're going to take our upholstery thread, gather that, and then tack that to the top of our final berry. Now, all of my berries have toppers on them, or will shortly. I've also taken little lengths of my velvet ribbon. I've tied a little knot, and I'm going to tack those to the top. You could use whatever kind of ribbon you have and you like for this step. Anything would really work here. I picked the green. I felt like it really matched the green fabric. It almost serves like the vine from the strawberry. It was kind of my imagining for that. So we're just pulling that tight, grab our final little berry. And I did not do this, but just like we did with the 5-petal berry topper, if you wanted to pin this down in place while you're working, that would be absolutely fine. It might help you a little bit if you need to secure it. So just sewing this down in place, grabbing some of my berry fabric. My hands were getting a little tired at this point, going through all of that. I was using my table to help push that needle. And now, let's see, going to make my little knot, and we're going to shove that down out the side, and we are done with the hand sewing part. Yay! Now I've got my hot glue gun all heated up, and I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue on the back of the knot on each of these. And then we're just simply going to pop that onto the top of the berry. I left my tails a little long. I do need to trim all of those up so that they're somewhat even, but just, I don't want them too terrible long. I like how they kind of flop down the side though. I do like that. So just gluing those, it also helps disguise any of our little hand stitching. And then we're going to take our little white felt flower and our little yellow flower center. So let's take the yellow flower center first. We're going to fold it in half lengthwise. I will link to my Cheeky Apple video down below, so if you want to see that assembly. We're going to put a little hot glue to secure the end of that. We're going to put a little hot glue in the center of our bloom. Pop it right onto our white flower like so. Just kind of fold that white up around. You can add a little bit more hot glue down near the base if you need to. If you think your petal needs to fold up more, put a little glue on the back, and then I just tack that to the top of my berry. And I'm going to clean up any of the little hot glue strings from here like so. And now I'm just cleaning up the ends of my velvet ribbon. Super easy, super fun. I hope this has inspired you to maybe try to make your own fabric strawberries. They are so much fun to make, you guys. And look and see what other products you have in your stash. I not only used fabric and sewing, but I used some ribbon and I used felt stitching dies. So you can use some of your felt die cuts if you're a paper crafter or felt stitcher. See if there are ways to incorporate some felt into your next sewing project. Okay, everyone, I think that's it for today. I am going to show you an up-close look at all 6 of my berries, 5 small and 5 small and 1 large. So here are these berries. Again, all of the fabric is from Tim Holtz. And I will link to each of the individual fabrics as well as the fat quarter bundles that the fabrics came from down in the description below. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and make sure and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new floss tube, stitching, or quilting video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.